Hello, BookTube. I'm still settling in here at Hyde Cottage after the little vacation that I took with Frida up to Vermont. It was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I'm thinking back on it today. But whether I'm settling in or not, the mail keeps coming. Now, today was a very different thing, because today's mail was not the backlog of 5 days, and it's also pouring buckets outside in Boston. It's dark as night, and it's pouring buckets. And I don't know. I don't know what's going through my mail carrier's mind when a circumstance like that arises, but I hope they know that they certainly don't have to make an effort for me on a day like that. They can wait a day or two for me. But one way or another, I'm pretty sure that what we have today, 3 packages, is going to be it for the day. I'm pretty sure. I think that rain is forecast all week. I'll have to check on that. I don't really mind. I don't really scrutinize the weather forecasts when they're not going to have 20 feet of snow. But we have all 3 of the specimens. We have a paper envelope, we have a flat cardboard envelope, and we have a box. So we'll see. There might be a Steve book in these 3. It won't be 30, though, or 40, or whatever we did yesterday. It'll be a much smaller and more discreet number. Something Bean can handle. Oh. It was also a great pleasure to be able to bring her to a lot of places. Vermont is very dog-friendly, as one actually a librarian said. We went to a library book sale just on the spur of the moment and walked in, and then we had to pay, so you had to go into the library proper. This beautiful old library, restored thing that must have been 200 years old, and the librarian looked like she was a restored 200-year-old antique as well. And I thought the worst, because Frida saw all these people in the library, all these little old ladies that none of whom had ever patted her before, and she demands to be patted by everyone. And when I say demand, I don't mean that she puts a paw up gently on your leg. I mean she screams, she yodels. It's not really a bark. It's more like a high-pitched terrier version of a beagle's bay. It's and she's up on her hind legs when she does it, because the force of it drives her straight upward, and it's very piercing. And then when she did that in a library of all places, I thought we were going to get the mother of all but instead everybody loved her. They just came, all these little old ladies came flocking all around her, and she was jumping up on each one of them so they could fuss with her and pet her. And the librarian said, very simply she put it, in Vermont, dogs are family. It was very much like that. I was able to take her almost everywhere without any trouble at all. And, you know, she contributes to that, I should say. Fresh from the memory of my darling Lucy, I should say this is a dog who contributes to goodwill on the part of other people, because she doesn't misbehave at all. Aside from the aforementioned yodeling, but most people, when you are the object of that yodeling from a dog that looks like a stuffed toy, you don't consider it an imposition. You don't consider it misbehavior. That has melted far sterner people than those librarians. Whereas Lucy, most places don't like it if you go in and fart up the place, or pee on the rug, or whatever, all the other stuff that she did, or start to have a morose argument with a piece of furniture or something like that. So it was nice. It was very, very nice. So what have we got here? It's a novel. Okay, we start with a novel, a September novel, by an author whose name rings a bell. This is William Kent Kruger, This Tender Land. It looks like a big historical novel, but don't I remember this author's name connected with mysteries? With a mystery series? Am I remembering that wrong? Kruger's first standalone novel since his 2013 best-selling award-winning Ordinary Grace tells the story of 4 children, all orphans, who embark on a bold and dangerous journey during the summer of 1932. They are fleeing a place of loss and cruelty and a terrible crime that one of them committed. The means of their escape is a canoe which takes them down the Gilead River in Minnesota on their way to the mighty Mississippi in search of a possible home in St. Louis. Good Lord. So it's an Odyssey novel. The narrator, Odie, is a heroic little boy, a natural storyteller full of mischief and bravado and spirit. Okay, all right, great. That sounds fantastic. But when they say first standalone novel, am I assuming then that maybe I'm right and that he did write a series of murder mysteries? He is the acclaimed author of the New York Times bestselling Ordinary Grace. Okay, they really want to push. The whole thing is shaped to push this to people who don't read his murder mysteries. Winner of the Edgar Award for Best Novel. Oh, well, Ordinary Grace won the Edgar Award. As well as 18 Cork O'Connor novels, including Desolation Mountain and Sulphur Springs. And he lives in the Twin Cities. And I have read some of those novels. I don't know if I'm going to get a list of them. Am I going to get a list of... Okay, boy, oh boy. The inside is all about Ordinary Grace. Well, that makes sense, right? It makes sense that they would stress that he has done standalone, quote-unquote, literary novels before, non-genre novels before. It makes sense that they would just stress that. Yes, okay, all right. There's a huge list of his books, and the first one of the, what was it called again? Cork O'Connor novels. The first of those was Iron Lake, which I read, and I read some others in the. I read Vermilion Drift. I read Windigo Island. I think we saw on this channel. Well, the point is, I really like those things. I don't think I read Ordinary Grace. I don't think I ever did that. So I might never have encountered this author when he's wearing his literary hat. we will see. We'll see how well it fits him. It's September, so we don't see right away. But that's intriguing because I'm always, I think I've mentioned on this channel, I'm always interested when an author tries something different than what got them in the door. This guy's done, I mean, that murder mystery series is 20 books long. And he can now consistently, he's done it twice, tries his hand at something completely different register. I always like that. Even when it doesn't work, I always like that. It always intrigues me. So what have we got in the cardboard? Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right. We saw this already. This is due soon. This is a May book. I have discovered, just poking around here in the last day, that May is just unbelievable for books. I don't know why I wasn't registering with me while I was getting them in the mail. But May is just off the charts. It's just unbelievable. I'm going to have to deal with it. The day is, I think, the 22nd. Ordinarily, when we're a week out from the end of the month, that's when I start to deal with the next month. When I start to think about, okay, I've still got, the top shelf is still entirely April books. And it's bombarded with them. I mean, it's mountains of April books, more than I could ever possibly review. Even for my own venue, I have a well-respected venue of my own where I can review whatever I want at whatever length I want in whatever way I want. A very nice thing to have. Open Letters Review wants your work. We want your work. But realistically speaking, what with, maybe other people who want a shot, and I think we've sort of settled into a pattern at Open Letters where we don't do more than one review a day. That's a little bit of overkill. I mean, 365 reviews ought to be enough in 1 year. So let's say today, I look at April, then despite the fact there are stacks and stacks, just ramparts of books, many of which are very good, I can look at those and say, now, a week out from the end of the month, that I'm only going to be able to do 7, at most 8 of those books. So what are they? Your reading of the shelf changes completely, whereas before it was, oh, I have this to say about that, and oh, I really want to get to that. Now, in the 3rd week of the month, provided you're working under the dictum that most of 99.9% of your reviews for April are going to be of April books, because every month has its own deluge, then now I can look at that shelf and say, okay, well, of all of these books, what are the ones I can't live without reviewing? Which is not the mind frame when the month begins. So this is anyway. That was a long digression to say this is a May book, and it's we've seen it already. It's Sita Stelzer's Working with Winston, about his secretaries, Winston Churchill's cadre of secretaries, who he worked like drovers' horses, but did care for. He did treat them well after his way. As well as he treated anyone. He treated his secretaries well. And they were devoted to him. With the same tenor and the same fervency and the same I'm willing to do anything for the boss mentality that has been exhaustively recorded in the secretarial pool of Adolf Hitler. Much has been written about Winston Churchill. Yes, indeed. And of the important world leaders, politicians, and high-ranking military personnel with whom he interacted. But Churchill also required a vast staff to maintain the intense pace at which he worked. And when he strode the world stage, the secretarial and support staff positions were inevitably filled by women. Though extraordinarily talented and valuable to Churchill in his work, these women remain unheralded. and this book heralds them. So, and it's I've had the advanced copy of this for quite some time. To put it mildly, I've mentioned on this channel before, there's basically a Holy Trinity here, and oddly enough, the Holy Trinity that I'm thinking of does not contain the member of the actual Holy Trinity that you might think it would. I make exceptions for supernatural beings, but the Holy Trinity of Hitler, Napoleon, and Churchill, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe it's I don't hurry to read those books. I get to them in their time. I will certainly read this. It has been on my shelf. I won't let it go by, especially if it's interesting, if it's something new. But maybe it's just the nationalism in me every once in a while. My love for, my partiality for America, for the United States, raises its head, because I'm sure that someone in, for instance, the Dutch Netherlands or in Britain could say, if the equivalent of me, if God forbid there were such a thing. I don't think there's an equivalent of me anywhere, but the equivalent of me, I could easily see them saying, oh, well, save us from the Holy Trinity of Washington, Lincoln, and FDR. So, and maybe that's true. There's certainly no shortage of books on those three. And then, of course, there's the one who beats them all, which is Jesus. Jesus Christ, the actual member of the Holy Trinity. I never miss a Jesus book. I go out of my way to get them. But Churchill? Well, we'll have to see. I will read the first few chapters of this thing. I should have done that already. And if the attitude, mainly on the author's part, I already know the attitude of his secretaries. They have cropped up in the many, many, many Churchill books that I have read. They have cropped up many times. I already know their attitude. If the author's attitude is that she is writing a book about the disciples of Jesus, then I'll be noticeably less interested. But I should have got to this long since. This is early May. May is going to crush me. It's going to crush me, like last October did. That's the size of what I looked at, of what I realized the other day. And then the last thing we'll do here is the box. Let's see what we have here. It's a box from W.W. Norton, my favorite non-Penguin publisher, but it's very light. It's a very light box. The bean is right at the ready. What are you going to do? You want the box? You want the box? Not much, you don't. Oh, great. Okay. All right. Fantastic. Talk about the opposite of what I was just saying. Okay, this is also early May. Crikey. Okay, so May is it's crushing. This is the same day. It's the Churchill book. But this is the finished copy of something we saw on this channel before, and it is a big, fat biography of someone who doesn't have a million biographies. This is a biography of King Henry VI of England. This is The Shadow King by Lauren Johnson. Big fat thing coming out from Pegasus Books. Firstborn son of a warrior father who defeated the French at Agincourt. Henry VI of the House of Lancaster inherited the crown not only of England but also of France, at a time when Plantagenet dominance over the Valois dynasty was at its glorious height. And yet, by the time he died in the Tower of London in 1471, France was lost, his throne had been seized by his rival Edward IV of the House of York, and his kingdom had descended into a violent chaos of the Wars of the Roses. Henry VI is perhaps the most troubled of English monarchs. A pious, gentle, well-intentioned man who was plagued by bouts of mental illness. In The Shadow King, Lauren Johnson tells his remarkable and sometimes shocking story in the fast-paced, colorful narrative that captures both the poignancy of Henry's life and the tumultuous and bloody nature of the times in which he lived. And I have the advanced copy of this thing. I've been so bombarded with April that I haven't really raised my head for May, although I have been reading June, July, and August of books that just pique my interest. This piques my interest, but I just did not get to it. Not even to... With books like this, I get ribbed by my friends because I typically start books like this at the back. Because I want to know, okay, it's a big fat biography of Henry VI. What has this author done that no other author has done? I want to look at the bibliography and see, is the bibliography mostly secondary sources? Is it mostly other people who've done the spade work, or have you done the spade work? Because those can make for two very different books, and also books of very, very different importance. I haven't even done that. It's shameful. Shameful. So I will dig into this. In fact, I should dig into this right away. This should be this week, because I'm going to want to write about this for sure, and it's going to take some time to study But anyway, we did indeed have a Steve book. This counts as a Steve book if anything does. A big fat biography of a non well tried ground. I can't wait to see what this author does. Who is she? I wonder if that'll give us a hint to. Okay, she knows how to do an author photo. Boy, oh boy, that's fantastic. Look at that. What a captivating face. Let's see. A historian with a first-class degree from Oxford University. She's the author of So Great a Prince. Okay, did we mention that last time? I might have forgotten that completely. So Great a Prince was a really good book. It's about Henry VIII, and it's a really good book. A history of the accession of King Henry VIII, also available from Pegasus Books, and she lives in England. Okay, so it looks like this might be her second book. And she's written a book that I enjoyed, but So Great a Prince, it's a different thing. It's a very different thing to write a book like that, a popular book about Henry VIII, than it is to write one about this figure. This figure is not well known, and a lot of the sources probably aren't translated. I'm hoping I'll have to dig into her bibliography and her source notes and see if she did actually dig into the French archives. Because if you don't do that, well, we shall see. We shall see. I will report back on this. So we have The Shadow King by Lauren Johnson. There is, right now, I did a million years ago. I should do it again. Right, a million years ago, I did a biography bookshelf tour, a library tour of my biography section out in the other room. And that's been a long time. There are 4,000 of you here that weren't there before. I should really do that again. But right now, there are 4 shelves of English royalty. It's a sweet tooth of mine. There's tons of American presidents, tons of other stuff. But there's 4 shelves of British royalty, and there's nothing on King Henry VI. There's no one book devoted to him. So this I really should have paid attention before now. I will this week. Then Working with Winston, about the secretaries who helped him at the frenetic pace of his labors. Wasn't that something about how the pub sheet went, that they helped him at the crushing pace of his labors? They helped him with a bunch of other things too, like getting into bed when he was drooling on himself, or getting him sobered up, or that sort of thing. They helped him with a lot of things that I don't think will be in this book, but I could be wrong, because I'm a slug abed and I haven't even got to it yet. And then the last one was a novel, This Tender Land by William Kent Kruger. This is it sounds like it's a historical novel, first of all, another ambitious historical novel in 2019, but it sounds like it's that every once in a while this author wants to flex his literary muscles, because you do a murder mystery series, a books in series, you go into your 10th, your 15th book, you have to remember every side character, you have to remember the little Easter eggs that your fans are going to want, you have to make the plots convincing, happening to the same character over and over again, and you have to adhere to the restrictions of the genre. The murder mystery genre has certain restrictions. We went over them in March Mystery Madness. We'll go over them plenty of times more. I'm not saying that makes it bad. I love a good murder mystery, and I remember liking this guy's murder mysteries, but you don't have to deal with any of that when you write just a plain old historical novel. And you're not saved by any of that either. So some writers, they switch gears in order to really stretch their muscles, in order to try harder at what they do. It's always fascinating to me, and yet fascinating as it is, I'm going to let it wait, because the Churchill book has to be done, and especially the Henry VI book has to be done. I should have done that long since. I should know that book already, and I don't. So I will get to it. I'll get to it soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to wrap this up. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.